The Nevada desert at dusk is a canvas painted in hues of fire and shadow, a raw, untamed beauty that both enthralls and humbles. As the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, bleeding streaks of apricot and deep crimson across an endless sky, a profound silence descended, broken only by the whisper of the wind. It was a wind that carried secrets across the ancient dunes, rustling through sparse creosote bushes and dancing over sun-baked rocks, a constant low murmur that spoke of time immemorial and forgotten tales. The air, crisp and cooling from the day's scorching heat, held a scent of dust, distant sage, and an undeniable wildness, a stark testament to nature's indifferent majesty. Here, life was a tenacious struggle, every creature a testament to resilience, and every sunset a silent promise of a challenging night. In the midst of this vast, indifferent expanse lived Hank Morales, an old man whose face was a map of weathered lines, each crease etched by sun, wind, and the unspoken burdens of a life lived hard. A veteran cowboy, his hands, though gnarled, still held the quiet strength of a man accustomed to hard labor and the unforgiving rhythms of the land. His ranch, a solitary outpost against the encroaching wilderness, was his sanctuary and his prison. Hank's routine was as predictable as the desert's seasons, sun up to sundown, working his small spread, mending fences, tending to the few cattle he kept. But beneath the stoic facade and the quiet efficiency, a deep-seated loneliness resided, a shadow cast by years of solitude and the haunting echoes of his past military service, memories that often surfaced with the fading light. For days now, his routine had included the watchful observation of a particular wild Mustang colt, an animal whose youthful defiance seemed to stir something long dormant within him. As the last vestiges of daylight bled from the sky, Hank approached the colt, a gentle, almost hesitant figure against the deepening twilight. He extended a hand, calloused and strong, offering not just a gesture of peace, but a silent invitation of shelter. The air grew colder, and the vastness of the desert night threatened to swallow the small, vulnerable creature whole. In the colt's wide, dark eyes, Hank saw a reflection of something familiar, a raw, untamed spirit, yes, but also a profound vulnerability that resonated with his own unspoken needs. He imagined a warm stall, fresh water, and a respite from the harsh elements, a small comfort he could offer to this wild, beautiful thing. He felt a quiet empathy, a shared understanding of the struggle against an overwhelming world. But the colt, instead of accepting the offered sanctuary, tossed its head with an almost defiant spirit. Its ears flicked, its muscles tensed, and with a sudden explosive burst of energy, it bolted. It wasn't a random flight of fear, but a determined, almost guided dash, as if an unseen force pulled it deeper into the darkening dunes. Its lean form became a fleeting shadow, disappearing into the deepening twilight, leaving behind only the faintest impression in the sand. This unexpected rejection, this resolute refusal of comfort, sparked a deep, almost primal curiosity within Hank. Why would a young, vulnerable animal choose the harshness of the night over the promise of safety? What unseen imperative drove its urgent flight? The mystery tightened its grip on Hank's aging heart. Intrigued and feeling an inexplicable pull, a flicker of purpose in his otherwise quiet, predictable existence, Hank knew he couldn't simply let the mystery fade into the night. His veteran instincts, honed by years of surviving in unforgiving landscapes, both literal and metaphorical, stirred within him. The colt's tracks, faint but discernible in the last light, beckoned him. This decision was heavy with the weight of his own memories, the silent companions of his solitude, and a sudden, urgent need to understand. He had to follow. He had to know. The desert, which had always been a backdrop to his lonely life, now presented itself as a path, a challenging journey into the unknown that promised either revelation or deeper despair. Before we delve deeper into Hank's extraordinary pursuit and the incredible discovery that awaits him, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss a moment of this captivating journey. The last sliver of sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the vast Nevada canvas in hues of bruised purple and deep indigo. Hank Morales, a man whose life had been etched by the desert's unforgiving hand, spurred his sturdy quarter horse, Buck, into the encroaching gloom. The tracks of the wild Mustang colt, barely discernible against the darkening sand, were his only guide. A profound silence, broken only by the rhythmic thud of Buck's hooves and the whisper of the wind, enveloped him. He leaned forward, eyes scanning the terrain, a familiar focus settling upon his weathered face. This wasn't merely a chase. It was an answer to an unspoken summons, a pull he hadn't felt since the days when every decision held the weight of life and death, when the stakes were immeasurable. The desert night, cold and vast, stretched before them, an indifferent witness to this solitary pursuit. He adjusted his hat, a silent acknowledgement of the long journey ahead. The challenging terrain quickly became a physical manifestation of his internal struggles. Shifting dunes swallowed Buck's hooves, sharp cacti clawed at his worn leather chaps, and the skeletal remains of forgotten fences, twisted by decades of sun and wind, snagged at his resolve. Each obstacle seemed to echo the invisible burdens Hank carried, the silent scars of a past spent serving his country in lands far, far away. The dust in the air, the vast emptiness stretching to the horizon, the profound sense of being utterly alone in a landscape that cared nothing for human plight. These sensations were not new. They were ghosts, familiar and unwelcome, conjuring fleeting, heavy impressions of distant, dusty battlefields. He recalled the specific texture of the air, the way silence could scream. Louder than any explosion, the gnawing isolation that had become his constant companion long after he'd returned home. These memories, once buried deep, now stirred, contributing to the quiet ache of his current loneliness, a constant hum beneath the surface of his stoic demeanor. Yet, the Mustang colt, that defiant spark of wild spirit, maintained an uncanny lead. It was always there, a fleeting shadow just beyond the reach of Hank's vision, never truly lost, never truly caught. Its tracks, though faint, were remarkably consistent, a deliberate, almost purposeful path carved through the treacherous landscape. The colt seemed to possess an innate compass, navigating the unseen contours of the desert with an unwavering certainty that deepened Hank's sense of wonder. This wasn't a panicked flight, it was a guided journey. Each time Hank felt he was losing the trail, a subtle shift in the wind or a glint of moonlight on a disturbed patch of sand would reveal the colt's continued progress. It was as if the young animal was leading him, not running from him, drawing him deeper into the heart of the wilderness, into an enigma he was compelled to unravel. What had begun as a simple curiosity, an old cowboy's fleeting interest in a stubborn young horse, now transformed into something profound, an almost spiritual quest. Hank felt an undeniable connection to the wild spirit of the colt, a sense of being led towards something significant, something that transcended the immediate moment. The emptiness within him, a void he had carried for decades, seemed to stir with a nascent hope. This journey was stripping away the layers of stoicism he had meticulously built around himself, forcing him to confront not just the desert's physical challenges, but the silent, internal ones as well. He wasn't just following a horse. He was following a whisper of purpose, a flicker of light in the vast, indifferent darkness of his own existence, hoping it might finally speak to the deep-seated loneliness that had clung to him like the desert dust. He pressed on, his resolve hardening with every mile. The desert night, once a vast canvas of possibility, now closed in around Hank like a shroud. The last vestiges of twilight had long since faded, replaced by an inky blackness that swallowed the distant mountains whole. Above, the stars, usually a comforting blanket, seemed impossibly sharp, cold pinpricks in the fabric of the cosmos, offering little warmth or guidance. The air, which had been merely cool at dusk, now bit with a frigid intensity, chilling Hank to the bone despite his thick denim jacket and worn leather chaps. Every gust of wind, a mournful whisper across the endless dunes, carried with it the scent of dry earth and a profound, unsettling silence that pressed in on his ears. Only the rhythmic creak of his saddle and the steady hoofbeats of his horse, Dusty, dared to break the gloom. Tracking in such conditions was a brutal test of endurance, a stark reminder of the desert's indifferent power. The ground, a mosaic of shifting sands and jagged rock, offered little purchase, each step a precarious gamble in the moonless gloom. The intensifying solitude of this desolate wilderness served as a cruel mirror, reflecting fragmented images of a past Hank had long tried to bury. Fleeting impressions coalesced into vivid, almost haunting memories. He saw the dust, not just from Dusty's hooves, but the choking, gritty dust of faraway lands, clinging to every breath, every uniform. He heard the silence, not the natural quiet of the desert, but the terrifying, absolute silence that followed an explosion, the kind that screamed louder than any noise, pregnant with unspoken horrors and the chilling realization of what had just been lost. Faces, long since blurred by time and grief, flashed behind his eyelids. Hopeful young recruits, stoic, seasoned veterans, all under his command, looking to him for answers he often didn't have. A particular memory, sharp and unbidden, surfaced. The weight of a fallen comrade in his arms, the desperate, futile effort to staunch the flow of life, the crushing burden of a decision made in a split second that forever altered destinies. Regret, a bitter taste in his mouth, mingled with the dry desert air. These internal battles raged, mirroring his physical struggle against the unforgiving landscape, each memory a fresh wound, reopening scars he thought had long healed. The relentless pursuit was taking its toll. Hank's age, usually a quiet companion, now asserted itself with undeniable force. His muscles, accustomed to years of ranch work, screamed in protest. A dull ache radiated from his lower back and seized his shoulders. His eyes, strained from peering into the impenetrable darkness, burned with fatigue. A tremor, barely perceptible, ran through his hands as he gripped the reins, a testament to the exhaustion seeping into his very bones. Yet, beneath the physical weariness, a new, unsettling sensation stirred. The journey was stripping away the layers of his usual stoicism, the hardened shell he'd built around himself over decades. He felt exposed, vulnerable, as if the desert winds were not just chilling his skin, but flaying his very soul, forcing him to confront long-buried feelings of loss, guilt, and an aching, profound loneliness that had become a constant, albeit silent, companion since his return from service. This raw emotional vulnerability, rather than weakening him, paradoxically fueled his resolve, transforming his quest into something deeply personal, a desperate search for meaning beyond the immediate pursuit. Through it all, the Mustang remained his unwavering beacon. It was a phantom guide, always just beyond the reach of his vision, yet its presence was undeniable. A subtle rustle in the distance, a faint print in a patch of sand, illuminated by a brief flash of starlight. Its path was unwavering, a testament to a purpose that defied mere animal instinct. It navigated the treacherous landscape with an uncanny grace, never faltering, never straying from a direct, almost deliberate trajectory. Hank had seen many wild Mustangs in his time, observed their natural movements, but this colt was different. It moved with an almost preternatural intelligence, as if it possessed a map known only to itself, leading him deeper and deeper into the desert's heart. This unwavering certainty in the colt's movements solidified Hank's growing belief that he was being led to something extraordinary, something far greater than a simple, lost animal. It was a profound, almost spiritual conviction, a guiding spirit in the desolate wilderness, pulling him towards an unknown destiny, a revelation that promised to finally speak to the emptiness within him, even if the journey itself was tearing him apart. He pressed on, one weary step after another, his focus singular, his heart a drumbeat of anticipation and dread, following the silent promise of the wild Mustang. The first hint of dawn, a faint, pearlescent glow, began to paint the eastern horizon, chasing away the deepest shadows of the desert night. With the approaching light, a subtle yet profound shift occurred in the Mustang's demeanor. Its relentless, almost urgent pace, which had felt like a desperate pull through the darkness, began to slacken. The frantic energy that had propelled it forward now gave way to a more measured, deliberate gait, less a flight, more a purposeful journey. It no longer seemed to be fleeing, but rather guiding, its movements becoming less of a chase and more of a careful procession. The path it chose, once a winding, unpredictable course through the vast, indifferent expanse, now narrowed, becoming singularly focused. It led Hank not towards another distant ridge or an open plain, but towards a specific, almost hidden pocket of the desert, a secluded basin cradled by a cluster of gnarled junipers and ancient wind-sculpted rock formations. The very air around them seemed to thicken, shedding the crisp, cold anonymity of the open desert for a heavy, almost humid stillness, pregnant with unspoken anticipation. Every breath Hank took felt charged, his senses on high alert, the promise of discovery humming beneath his skin, a strange mix of dread and hopeful wonder. As light strengthened, washing the landscape in soft oranges and purples, Hank's experienced eyes discerned details the night had obscured. The ground beneath his horse's hooves offered subtle clues, patches of disturbed earth, larger, more deliberate churnings, as if something substantial had moved here, perhaps struggled desperately. A faint, almost imperceptible scent, alien to the dry desert tang, wafted on a stray gust of wind. It was a musky, animalistic aroma, tinged with something primal and unsettling, a scent that prickled the hairs on Hank's neck. His gaze swept over the unusual rock formations that ringed the basin. One jagged spire of reddish stone seemed to stand sentinel, its shadow lengthening with the rising sun, pointing an accusing finger towards the basin's heart. These weren't random features. They felt like carefully placed breadcrumbs, meticulously laid out, leading him inexorably towards a truth he wasn't yet ready to comprehend, but knew was imminent. Hank's veteran instincts, honed over decades of quiet observation on the ranch and sharpened by the crucible of his past service, now flared to life with an intensity that bordered on overwhelming. Every fiber of his being was engaged, every nerve ending thrumming. He felt a powerful premonition, a gut-wrenching certainty that he was not merely following a lost animal, but was on the very precipice of a profound revelation. This feeling was a potent cocktail of exhilarating excitement and deep, unsettling unease. The excitement stemmed from the sheer mystery, the unexpected purpose injected into his otherwise solitary existence. The unease, however, was a colder, more ancient dread, a whisper of potential sorrow or danger, a stark reminder that the desert, in its beauty, could also conceal harsh, unforgiving realities. His hand instinctively went to the worn leather of his saddle, a familiar, grounding gesture amidst the swirling emotions. He slowed his horse, allowing the Mustang a greater lead, trusting its unwavering path completely. This wasn't just a pursuit anymore. It was a pilgrimage, a journey into the very heart of something unknown, guided by a creature of pure, untamed wilderness. Then, with an abruptness that startled Hank, the wild colt stopped. It stood perfectly still at the edge of the juniper thicket, its dark coat blending almost seamlessly with the shadows still clinging to the basin floor. For a long moment, it remained motionless, its head bowed slightly, as if listening to secrets carried on the wind. Then, slowly, deliberately, it turned its head, fixing Hank with an unblinking stare. Its eyes, usually wild and untamed, now held an ancient wisdom, a depth that seemed to transcend its youth. There was no fear in them, no defiance, only a silent, profound plea, a desperate urgency that communicated more clearly than any human voice. It was as if the colt was confirming his arrival, acknowledging their shared journey, and inviting him to witness something sacred and heartbreaking. After another beat of profound silence, the Mustang lowered its head even further, then gently, almost reverently, gestured with its muzzle towards a specific spot deeper within the protective embrace of the gnarled junipers, a tiny, almost imperceptible hollow, hidden from the casual gaze. The message was clear, undeniable, and it sent a shiver down Hank's spine. The truth was waiting. The first rays of the rising sun painted the eastern horizon, chasing away the night's darkness. Hank, his body aching, mind exhausted and frayed, dismounted his horse with a groan in the pre-dawn stillness. The wild Mustang colt, his tireless guide, stood 20 yards ahead, head lowered, body still, pointing towards gnarled greasewood bushes. The crisp air carried a faint, unsettling, primal scent of life and death. Hank's heart pounded, a frantic bird in his chest, as he slowly, cautiously approached the indicated spot. Every instinct screamed at him, a mixture of dread and a powerful certainty that the end of his quest lay just beyond. Pushing aside the foliage, Hank's breath hitched in his throat. There, nestled precariously in the sparse, unforgiving desert soil, was a sight that tore at him. A tiny, fragile newborn foal lay shivering, its damp coat, legs too weak, Its large, dark eyes, wide with fear, stared up, a desperate plea for life. Its body trembled, breath shallow, struggling against the cold wilderness. But it was not alone. Beside it, partially obscured by brush, lay the still, lifeless form of its mother, her eyes once vibrant, now dull and glazed. She had succumbed to the desert's brutal conditions, likely after giving birth. The ground bore signs of a recent, desperate struggle, a tragic end for two lives. The raw tableau of innocence and loss, stark against the awakening desert, struck Hank hard. The stoic facade, constructed over decades, his hardened shell, shattered. The sight of that vulnerable, abandoned creature, mirroring his own deep pain and profound loneliness since service, unleashed suppressed emotions. Every unspoken grief, unacknowledged wound, every tear he had refused to shed for fallen comrades, for lost loves, for a life lived in solitary quietude, erupted from within him in one devastating wave of anguish. A guttural cry tore from his throat, echoing the foal's silent distress. The dam broke, for the first time in years. Tears, hot and uncontrollable, streamed down his weathered cheeks, carving paths through dust and grime. He sank to his knees, body racked with sobs, hands clenching in the sand, the world's weight pressing down relentlessly. In that moment of shattering grief, kneeling in the desolate Nevada desert, Hank was forced to confront the terrifying depths of his loneliness. The abandoned foal, a symbol of pure need, became a poignant reflection of his own isolation. Hank, too, wrestled with suffocating silence that had become his constant, unwelcome companion. The creature's desperate need for connection, care, and warmth mirrored his own desperate, unvoiced yearning. He saw himself in its trembling form, a solitary soul adrift, longing for a genuine touch, a meaningful presence, a purpose beyond his quiet existence. The tears were not just for the deceased mother or the struggling foal. They were for all the unspoken pain, missed connections, years spent building walls instead of bridges. The desert, once escape, became a profound mirror, reflecting his deepest, most primal wounds. Through the blur of his tears, Hank became aware of a silent presence. The wild Mustang colt, his guide, stood unmoving, a respectful distance, its intelligent eyes fixed on him. It offered no judgment, only profound, ancient understanding. Its presence was a silent testament to its extraordinary role as pathfinder and witness to Hank's raw emotional release, a confidant in his vulnerability. The colt comprehended life's fragility, survival's harsh realities, and the universal need for connection. Its gaze conveyed shared understanding, an empathy transcending man and beast. It had led him not just to tragedy, but to a profound confrontation, forcing him to shed armor, opening a path he never knew he needed. The desert wind, once secrets, now a gentle hand, urging him forward, towards an uncertain, significant tomorrow. The raw, guttural cry that had escaped Hank, a sound he hadn't heard from himself in decades, slowly receded into the vast silence of the desert. His tears, though still fresh on his weathered cheeks, had carved clean paths through the grime and dust, a physical manifestation of the emotional storm that had just passed. But even amidst the lingering ache of grief and the profound shock of his own vulnerability, the ingrained instincts of a protector, honed by a lifetime of hard living and service, kicked in. The fragile, trembling form of the newborn foal, so small and utterly defenseless against the indifferent desert, demanded his immediate attention. He knelt, his movements stiff from exhaustion and emotion, but precise. With a tenderness that belied his rough exterior, Hank carefully gathered the tiny creature, its delicate bones feeling impossibly light against his calloused hands. He stripped off his worn denim jacket, wrapping the shivering foal in its familiar warmth, cradling it close to his chest. The rhythmic beat of his own heart, still thrumming with residual grief, now offered a faint comfort to the shivering infant. He checked its breathing, its tiny nostrils flaring with each shallow breath, a desperate struggle for life. The sight of the deceased mother, a majestic mare now still and cold, brought a fresh pang of sorrow. But Hank knew there was nothing more to be done for her. He knelt beside her for a moment, his head bowed in silent respect, acknowledging her final, heroic act of bringing life into this harsh world. It was a somber, sacred moment, a quiet farewell under the vast, indifferent sky. The return journey was long and arduous, a slow procession under the relentless desert sun, which was now climbing higher, painting the sky in hues of harsh blue and blinding white. Hank moved with a renewed, albeit weary, purpose. The newborn foal, nestled securely in his jacket, was a precious, fragile burden, a tiny spark of life he was determined to protect. His horse, sensing the gravity of the situation, plodded steadily, its hooves kicking up dust that glittered like gold in the morning light. Trailing behind them, a silent, watchful shadow, was the wild Mustang colt. It maintained a respectful distance, its gaze fixed on Hank and his precious cargo, a silent guardian in the vast emptiness. The desert, which had felt like an oppressive, lonely expanse just hours before, now seemed to embrace them, a shared space of vulnerability and nascent hope, its stark beauty softening around the edges of their quiet, determined journey. News, like the desert wind, travels fast and often without clear origin. Whispers of the old cowboy crying in the desert began to circulate among the handful of local truckers who frequented the dusty roads, and eventually among the few scattered residents of the nearest tiny settlement. The image of Hank Morales, the stoic, impenetrable veteran, known for his quiet demeanor and solitary life, breaking down in tears, was both shocking and deeply intriguing. It sparked a flurry of curiosity and speculation, adding an unexpected external dimension to Hank's intensely private, internal healing process. People wondered what could have possibly moved the hardened man to such an emotional outburst, unknowingly becoming part of the narrative of his profound transformation. Back at the ranch, a subtle but profound shift began to unfold within Hank. The daily routine of caring for the tiny foal, which he instinctively began to call Little One, became a quiet ritual of healing. He learned its feeding schedule, its tiny murmurs, the way its wobbly legs struggled to find purchase. The act of nurturing another life, so completely dependent on him, slowly began to chip away at the deep-seated loneliness that had been his constant companion for so long. Each bottle feeding, each gentle stroke of its soft fur, was a small act of connection, a gentle opening of his guarded heart. He found himself talking to the foal, sharing whispered memories, finding solace in its innocent presence. The wild Mustang, true to its watchful nature, remained a silent, almost spiritual presence nearby. It would often appear at the edge of the ranch, observing Hank and Little One, a watchful sentinel, a living bridge between the wild and the domesticated, between past pain and future hope. Its continued presence was a silent affirmation, a testament to the extraordinary bond forged in the heart of the unforgiving desert, a bond that was now nurturing a new sense of purpose and a gentle, tentative opening of Hank's once impenetrable heart, promising a future he had never dared to imagine. The days at the ranch settled into a rhythm dictated by the fragile life of the tiny foal. Hank, with a tenderness that surprised even himself, devoted every waking hour to its care. He'd initially called it Little One, a simple term of endearment. But as the foal grew stronger, its eyes brighter, its steps more confident, a more profound name began to resonate within him. He christened her Hope, a name that encapsulated not just the foal's fight for survival, but the burgeoning, fragile hope that had begun to bloom within his own weary heart. Each bottle of milk, each gentle grooming session, each quiet moment spent watching her sleep became a small, deliberate step on Hank's own journey of healing. The emotional wounds of his past, long festering beneath layers of stoicism and solitude, slowly began to knit together, not vanishing entirely, but becoming scars rather than open sores. The wild Mustang colt, the very creature that had led Hank to this profound discovery, remained a constant, silent presence. It was no longer just a wild animal, but a living, breathing testament to resilience and unexpected connection. It would often appear at the ranch's fence line, observing Hope's playful antics and Hank's gentle ministrations. Its presence was a bridge, a subtle, powerful link between Hank's solitary past and the hopeful future he was now tentatively building. The Mustang, having fulfilled its extraordinary role as a guide, had become something more, a symbol of the desert's profound wisdom, a quiet guardian watching over the new life it had helped to save. An unspoken bond formed between the three of them, Hank, Hope, and the wild Mustang. A silent understanding forged in the crucible of the vast, indifferent landscape. Hank Morales, once a man defined by the heavy mantle of his loneliness and the unspoken burdens of his past military service, underwent a gradual yet profound transformation. The stoic shell he had built around himself, a defense against the world and its potential for pain, began to soften. Through the unwavering demands and simple joys of caring for Hope, he discovered a renewed sense of purpose, a reason to rise each morning that extended beyond mere survival. The silent companionship of the wild Mustang, a reminder of the extraordinary events that had reshaped his world, further cemented this newfound connection. He began to interact more openly with the few people who crossed his path, the local feed store owner, the occasional truck driver, even the young veterinarian who helped him with Hope's initial checkups. He found himself sharing snippets of his incredible story, not with bitterness or regret, but with a newfound openness, a quiet wonder at the desert's unexpected gifts. His eyes, once shadowed by unspoken grief, now held a glimmer of peace, a reflection of the hope he nurtured. The video concludes with an image that speaks volumes, a powerful tableau etched against the endless canvas of the Nevada desert. Hank, his face etched with the lines of a life lived fully, but now softened by contentment, stands beside Hope. She is no longer the fragile newborn, but a thriving, spirited young mare, her coat gleaming in the late afternoon sun, her movements graceful and strong. A short distance away, the wild Mustang colt, now a magnificent yearling, grazes peacefully, its keen eyes occasionally flicking towards its human and equine companions. The three figures, silhouetted against the vibrant hues of a desert sunset, share a moment of profound tranquility. It is a testament to the extraordinary power of finding healing, redemption, and connection in the most unexpected places. This scene, more than any words, proves that even the most hardened hearts, those burdened by deep-seated pain and isolation, can ultimately find solace, purpose, and a profound sense of belonging. The desert, once a symbol of his loneliness, had become the very crucible of his rebirth, a silent witness to a life reclaimed. As the final, breathtaking image fades, a heartfelt thank you extends to you, our incredible viewers, for joining us on this emotional journey. Your support fuels our passion for uncovering and sharing these inspiring true stories, tales of resilience, compassion, and the enduring spirit of both humans and animals. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another captivating narrative that explores the profound connections we share with the natural world and each other. And for another remarkable story of hope found in the wilderness, click on the video. Now appearing on your screen, it's a tale that resonates deeply with the themes of unexpected rescue and the quiet strength found in the face